Can you hear me? Here we go. We're getting ready. I'm doing a sound check. Now, can you hear? We've got the microphone on. Okay. Thanks, Real News Scully. I'm sorry I didn't have the microphone on. I have my handy little new microphone. And we are down at the criminal courthouse in Santa Clara County. And there's something interesting that we're going to be talking about. I've done a lot of video and I've been out here earlier. We're going to talk about how mainstream media covers these cases versus how we're going to cover them. And the district attorney in Santa Clara, Jeff Rosen, who you guys know prosecuted me for 6 years for taking a photo of a cop who broke my hand in a court file room, is in that courthouse right now, and they are trying to resentence somebody. And we're going to talk about the criminal justice system because having been in it, having covered it, I think I can talk about it a little bit better and also talk about how the mainstream media covers this. So Channel 2 is out here tonight. This will be on the news tonight. There's been media requests granted inside there. So first of all, let's remember there are no cameras allowed in California's courtrooms and courthouses. And they criminalized that, and they prosecuted me for recording the police in the court file room to kind of set an example to make sure other people didn't do that. So going on inside there right now is a resentencing hearing of an individual by the name of Richard Farley, a white man who, so this is not a race issue, he was a white man who in 1988, some of you may not have even been born then, went to a campus, a tech campus in Sunnyvale, and basically shot and killed 7 people, injured 4, and was sentenced after a long hearing to the death penalty, a death sentence, which in California is more controversial than it is in other states. But I want to go over what has happened in other states. And one of the reasons when the prosecutor doesn't do their job, the police officers lie, or a trial is tainted, then what happens is the person who may have actually done something and deserved to go to jail or deserved the death penalty may end up getting off. So when we have individuals not doing their job, this is what it looks like. And so I'm in Santa Clara today, and Jeff Rosen, the district attorney who got elected in 2010, and in my view has been in office too long, took over victim services in 2015. And victim services is the victim witness area of the legal system. And what they are supposed to do is they're supposed to help survivors of serious crimes get through those crimes, get through the court process, and then be able to move on with their life. And by the way, that's the Santa Clara jail over there, right next to the Hall of Justice. And so what happened with victim services in this case is that we have been finding, in this case and other cases, that the DA is not following the law. And that's Marcy's Law. And the reason that I always report on cases from the standpoint of the victims is one, not all people who are victims of crime articulate the trauma they've been through. And sometimes they make it up, or they don't remember things the way they testified to. And that can really result in innocent people going through the court system unnecessarily. And so when the district attorney handles victim services and the prosecutions, there's kind of an inherent conflict. So I started to discover in 2019 that this district attorney here wasn't following the law, particularly Marcy's Law and crime victims laws, when he was handling these cases. And if he did, the hearings would be more fair. And so recently, even though our jails are completely full and people are waiting trial and having their rights violated, our district attorney decided he was going to resentence 10 individuals who had been sent to death row. Now, this has been done in other places, and it's not always a nefarious thing. In Illinois, the governor ended up commuting the death sentence of several individuals. And the reason they did was because they knew how unfair the situation was, how unfair the trial was. So even if they had gotten a conviction, they did it by cheating. And so it the people who are very into criminal justice reform really want to see the system be fair. And the most fair thing we can do is put cameras in courtrooms. And so we don't have cameras in courtrooms. And if you're going to a civil harassment case or a domestic violence case or any other case, if you can afford a transcript, you might have a written record of it. But 2 days ago, if you look in my community posts, there was a lawsuit filed in the California Supreme Court where they're trying to get cameras in the courtrooms. And so I'm going to be posting about that over this weekend. But right now, there are two mainstream media organizations in there covering, probably getting pictures of this case as they're trying to re-sentence Richard Farley. So I'm going to go over how we investigated this and what the real problems are, because I really believe that this case is going to get Jeff Rosen thrown out of office, because now he's taken it too far. He's really violating the rights of victims. He's insensitive to victims, as he claims to be a big victims advocate. And so this is a really important case. And too often we see people convicted of crimes they didn't commit. So the victims are told, oh, you have justice. And then we find out it was somebody else. There's an innocence project that comes along and gets them out of jail. Well, we've missed the opportunity to give those victims really justice if that happens. And so we're going to wait and see if this individual is being resentenced today, but we're going to focus on how the district attorney is not taking care of victims and how the criminal courts and the family courts are failing the public when it comes to public safety on these kind of cases. So let me go over what we have heard so far, and that is that Richard Farley was stalking this 36-year-old engineer, Laura Black. There's been a movie made about it, and he was kind of obsessing with her. And when he did, the media and the film that was done called Stalking Laura, that starred Brooke Shields, said that she had filed a restraining order and that it was ineffective. So I went and I checked at the courthouse for that restraining order. I wanted to know what she had said in advance of this terrible shooting in 1988. And the court said they have no record of a civil harassment case. She lived in Santa Clara County. She worked in Santa Clara County in Sunnyvale, and she would have had a restraining order filed here, and yet we cannot find that case. And the public information officer confirmed with me today that there is no civil case. So I don't know if the media just misreported that, if the court is kind of concealing it. But what happened was the HR department for this tech company called ESL did not do anything about the constant stalking, harassing. They gave Richard Farley the woman's address. He went to her apartment. He left her notes for 4 years. This was going on, kind of an obsessiveness. And the story goes that then she filed the restraining order, and that's what made him go off on a tangent and do the mass shooting. But we didn't find that restraining order. So that's curious. We're going to investigate that a little bit more. But more importantly, we're going to investigate the district attorney, who tends to not follow the law, not pursue the truth, and just want convictions because he thinks that's what's going to keep him in office. And so when we have district attorneys who know police officers lie, who know they're cheating in order to get a conviction, that really creates a public safety issue for all of us. So I'm working on that and I'm reporting on that, but I wanted to come in live, tell you where I am, what we're doing. There will be more videos up this weekend. You'll see mainstream media reporting on this. Channel 2 is out here covering it. And one thing that was really interesting is one of the cameramen who was here earlier that I spoke to off record, he told me that on the day of the shooting, He covered the shooting, and he and several other cameramen were in the bushes, and there was somebody from SWAT behind them, and that he said that you are in the line of fire, but he had their back. Those were the days when journalists actually did their job. They went out and they took cameras and they went immediately, and they waited until Richard Farley came out of the building because he wanted a sandwich. And so the reporters who cover these cases get traumatized too, because they've witnessed it, they've been through it, and then when they find out a district attorney is willing to overturn a sentence, it's a little insulting. If Jeff Rosen were trying to overturn it because he didn't feel the trial was fair, he could order a retrial, but to just simply do a resentencing has really upset the victims. So I have been watching this, and mostly what we're doing is covering the district attorney and how he is handling these cases, because I really believe this is going to be what gets him recalled and out of office once and for all. Um, so this is political. This is motivated by a DA who I think thought the Democrats were going to win the national election. Things are changing a little bit, and the victims that I spoke to today are really upset having to go through this again. And really, Richard Farley doesn't change his position at all. And so people who are sitting in those jails, not able to get a court date or get their cases resolved, it's really unfair to them as well. And so we're covering all of this, and we're covering it from the standpoint of the crime victims and in cases, and how that might affect somebody who's falsely accused just as much as it affects somebody's due process rights that's charged with a crime. So I'm going to put all this in later. Can I link him to Gavin Newsom? I'm trying to read some of your comments right now, and I'm glad you guys are chatting. I wanted to do that little chit chat before everybody came out of court. It's 2:00. They've been in there for about 30 minutes, and I might be out here for about another hour. So that's where we are. And thanks everybody for coming in today and watching the live stream. This is where we are out at the courthouse. And so in a couple hours, you'll probably see this in the news. You'll probably read news headlines about it. And we're going to talk about why it matters to criminal justice reform, but also to crime victims and this squirrely district attorney, Jeff Rosen, who needs to be removed from office. So this is covering the courts, and I thank you guys all for coming in and watching. There was 133 people in. I appreciate you all being here, and we're going to keep going. You can look at the post I did in my community post today is about the lawsuit to get cameras in the courts, and I'm going to make a big deal about that over the weekend as well. So thanks everybody, and watch for our drops this weekend. This is the Santa Clara Criminal Courthouse, where they call it, ironically, the Hall of Justice.